Hello everyone and welcome to the family work. We are snowed in. We got about 18 inches of snow on the ground and it hasn't been above freezing in almost 4 weeks now. And we're supposed to get more snow next week, although we are supposed to get back into 30s, so hopefully some of this will melt. All of our projects around the campground have just come to a stop. We've done all of our snow projects. We finished flipping the golf carts. We're waiting for the snow to melt so we can get those out of the garage and sell them, get some pictures of them. We've worked on another attraction for the splash park. We've pretty much prepped that as much as we can until spring. So Lincoln asked me to help him do a couple videos here, and he wanted me to do a video on why we bought the campground, or how we bought the campground, which I told him that's actually two different questions. Why video we're going to talk about today. The how was a year-long process, so we're going to break that up into a couple other videos, and I'll be doing that as well, hopefully today. So my wife and I had owned previous businesses, just small businesses. We always had, pretty much they were side gigs. We had real jobs, if you will, that were made paycheck that we could survive off of. And with each business, it grew a little bit. But the biggest thing with owning your own business is the time commitment. You take the risk that there's going to be income, but like the American dream, if the more income you want, the more harder you got to work, the longer hours you got to work, the more committed you got to be. So when we got pregnant with Lincoln, we kind of wanted to move back east. We were living out west, and it was just hot where we lived all the time, even in the winter, which had its benefits. It's nice when you wear t-shirts in December. However, in the summer, it was scorching hot, and you couldn't be outside in the middle of the day. So our family was back east, so we wanted to move back east, and we wanted to have land. I always dreamed of having some type of farm or ranch or acreage, woods, everything. My wife always wanted to be on a lake or have some water. So whenever we got bored, we would always look online for places for sale, and then we would kind of daydream. And even if we sold everything, our house and our business and everything, we could afford a loan, a mortgage on some land. But then what would we do for jobs? We would either have to start a new business from scratch, and most land you're out in the rural area. We didn't really have anything we could telecommute or do anything online. So we started looking at businesses that would have acreage, but that we could actually live there and live and work at the same place. So I didn't want to farm. I didn't want to buy the equipment to farm. I didn't really have a desire to do that. So we started looking at, I would always see like old Boy Scout and Girl Scout campgrounds for sale, for auction. And they were always beautiful properties. They had usually a mess hall and some cabins. So I saw potential there for those properties. But to operate as a summer camp, that's a huge commitment with staff. And if you're starting from scratch, that requires a lot of work and risk for sure. So we looked at that. I never had been camping before in an RV. My wife had growing up. So we started looking at RV parks and campgrounds. We started looking at hotels and motels and marinas. Of course, our budget wasn't that big, so we were very limited. But we always would daydream. And once we got pregnant with Lincoln, our first child, it was kind of our 5-year goal. We had just started a business, and it was becoming very successful. It went from just me working for minimum wage to, in 3 years, we had a full-time staff of 7 people. So it was great, but it's a lot of work. And the thing is about being the business owner is you never get time off. Even when you are away or off the clock, you still are responsible for everything. And with the type of businesses that we had, we felt like we were almost enslaved to it. You know, yeah, we would have staff that could handle some type of emergencies, but we could never plan vacations. We could never get away, and there was no end in sight to that because we didn't know when it would be. profitable enough to have full-time management that we could be more hands-off. So all that's to say, we started looking at focusing in on campgrounds, and we were willing to go anywhere. We looked all around the Mid-Atlantic and the upper Midwest. We weren't too peculiar. That location we had to be. And then eventually we started making offers on some. The first one was partially seller finance. The second one we had to offer on was fully seller finance, because we thought there would be more flexibility and creativity with our finances to do that. So, because getting a loan, if you've never owned a campground before, it all depends on the bank. We've had a lot of experience now. We can tell people about that and walk people through that process. You just got to find the right bank and the right lender, and you got to know the right answers to the questions. Everybody wanted to know how much experience we had working at campgrounds. Well, we owned several businesses that were moderately successful, but no, we had never worked at a campground before. So that's kind of why we started looking at campgrounds. And the nice thing about it is, even though, because our budget constrained how big of a campground we could get, we also wanted to be able to have a campground that we could run as a family. We do have part-time employees in the summers, and hopefully as we grow, we'll be able to find more staff and full-time staff so that we can become more and more hands-off. But we wanted to find a property that we could put a lot of our sweat equity, if you will, use the skill sets we have to grow the property, and still manage it, just the two of us, and now with our 3 kids. So that was always part of the plan. So that's why we kind of focused on a small enough campground we can handle by ourselves, but big enough campground there's profit that you could live off of. There were some campgrounds that are very cheap, especially if you go further north, because the camping season is so short, but we would have had to have full-time jobs to be able to survive. So we kind of looked around for the right balance. If you go further south, where campgrounds are open year-round, they tend to get more expensive because there's more income from that. And the original idea was, man, it'd be great to have a campground only open 6 months a year. Then we could have 6-month vacation every year. And it's funny because I tell everybody we work harder in the winter when we're closed than we do in the summer, because there's so much deferred maintenance that was never done, upgrades, improvements, new things that we're doing. So it is a full-time job for us for sure. And income-wise, I've talked about this in other videos, we just reinvest everything that comes into the campground. We put it right back into it to continue to grow it. And it's kind of our long-term goal to build it up to where it is self-sustaining, because it wasn't when we purchased it. We knew that going in. We saw the potential. And one of the best things about the campground is, and it can also be a bad thing, but we get to live here on site. We get to have our kids here with us. They get to work with us. They get to use their creativity, and we're trying to help them with that. And that's why we started doing these YouTube videos, so that they can find something that they enjoy, they're passionate about, and then they can create opportunity for themselves. You know, whether it's a worm farm or growing flowers or vegetables, or, you know, Reagan's starting to do some bath bombs. So just to be able to have a business where, as they grow up, they can learn about capitalism. They can learn that the more and harder you work, and if you stay committed to it and you see it through, the more potential reward there is from that. And that's just something that we didn't feel like we were able to do with our previous businesses, and in where we were previously living. And also the nice thing is about, you know, when the weather's nice, we can take a break and we can go down to our beach and we can go swimming. We have a half-mile river that goes to the campground. We can put the kayaks in, and it's a 45-minute kayak ride. And our kids, as they get older, they can go play in the creek, or they can go fishing, or if they have their friends here, they can go exploring in the woods and just do things that when we lived in a master plan community, they would have never been able to have those opportunities. So that's pretty much why we wanted a campground. I didn't really want a campground. I just wanted land, but I had to find a way to pay for that land, and campgrounds seemed to make the most sense. So that is how, excuse me, that is why our family bought a campground. We've been very blessed. It hasn't been easy. We've had a lot of difficult, stressful times, but we wouldn't change it for anything. So if you're thinking about buying a campground, I heard from another campground owner earlier on after we bought this that if owning a campground was easy or lucrative, then everybody would be doing it. And it's very true. It's not easy, and often it's not very lucrative. But if you're a hard worker, and if you're wise and frugal with your spending, just like with any other business, you can have great success depending on what you're looking for. Right now, the RV industry as an investment is huge. Dealerships and campgrounds are kind of recession proof because when you can't go on cruises and you can't take those trips, you can't fly, at least up here in the Midwest, a lot of people are choosing to stay close to home. They're seeing value, and whether it's taking the camper to the state parks or to the nearby states, or for a lot of people, just having it as a seasonal home, kind of like their own lakeside cabin that they can go to every weekend, not have to worry about loading it up, towing it somewhere, unloading, cooking meals. If it rains, packing everything up, cleaning up, get home, taking it all, unloading it, and getting it ready for the next trip. So depending on what your family's looking at doing, there's pros and cons with both of those, and what type of park you get. If you're near a destination and there's a lot of amenities, people don't really necessarily need to have everything at your park because they're not going to be spending much time there. Or if you're on the side of the highway and people are passing through. But if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you gotta have reasons for people to pick you over somewhere else. So we'll do a bunch more videos about that, what it's like to own a campground, but I wanted to answer the question that Lincoln had, why did we buy a campground? And that's it. So thanks for watching. Hope you subscribe. Have a great day.